Hey, this is Brett and Nadia, and you're watching Brett and Some Books. Thanks for joining us today. We are reading The Bosnia List by Keenan Trevenchevich and Susan Shapiro. This is Chapter 7, my Grandpa Murat's Karma. Birchkal, Bosnia, September 1992. "Those are not for Muslims," yelled a Serb woman at the makeshift Birchkal market, grabbing the red peppers from my hand. But I needed to buy something to eat. If I returned empty-handed, my father would blame himself for not protecting me. My mom would feel awful that she couldn't feed me. We just had soybeans in the cabinet and hardly any more money. Our neighbors hoped we'd die so they could loot what was left of our apartment. Although I was only 11, letting my family down made me feel like a failure. Walking home with my head down, hungry and dejected, I looked up to see Perro on the street corner. He wore a blue uniform and held a rifle, and was flirting with a pretty girl who had dark curly hair. I hadn't seen my coach in 4 months, since his armed police unit invaded our home. I stopped in front of him. I felt no respect for him or awe anymore. I was hurt and let down. I wanted to ask how he could let his men threaten us by gunpoint. If he was so powerful, why wouldn't he help us escape? He saw me and started laughing. As I walked away, I caught him pointing his finger and cracking up, humiliating me in front of his girl. "I hope you die," I muttered. It was the last time I'd see him alive. That night, I was sitting in the rocking chair in our living room, swaying back and forth by candlelight, when the knock on our door made me jerk. I stopped swaying and turned toward the door, scared that Pirro had returned to get us, or it could be Daka here to steal more. "Can I come in?" a lady asked. She introduced herself as Zorica and said that she was a Bosnian Serb who'd been living in Croatia. Behind her was a shy 6-year-old boy holding her hand. They'd moved in right below us into my good pal Huso's two-bedroom apartment. Huso's family had fled the country for safety in the middle of the night without saying goodbye. Dad said they had to go fast. They were on a blacklist to be killed. I didn't like that Huso was gone, and this woman had taken us home. I stared at Zorica, who had short, puffy brown hair and wore jeans, a t-shirt, and sandals. No lipstick or makeup. She looked Mom's age. She took her shoes off at the door and instructed her son to take his sneakers off, too. My mom let her inside, and she shook hands with my brother and Dad. She wasn't armed or eyeing our belongings. She already had Huso's place, so what did she want from us? "I'd offer coffee, but we don't have any propane left," Mom said, looking ashamed. "Your father and my uncle were friends from World War II, Zorica told her. "Keenan, why don't you go show her son your miniature cars?" Mom prompted. I played with the boy nearby so I could eavesdrop. Zorica told my mother, "During World War II, your father jumped out of a moving truck to escape the Germans. He ran to the village where my Uncle Novik lived. Your father hid inside my uncle's house for 3 days." This stranger knew my grandpa, whom I'd never met. Grandpa Emina said he was a handsome gentleman who dressed well and was beloved by everyone, especially birds. Aunt Basira inherited her love of animals from him. To thank my uncle, Murat promised to buy his milk from then on, Zorka went on. So for the next 40 years, Novak came on his bike twice a week with fresh farm milk. Your father could get milk anywhere, but Novak was poor and needed the income, so he helped to keep Novak in business. Your father was a good, loyal man. I had seen that milkman, Novak, at the door once. He was wearing a dark suit and a fedora like Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, my dad's favorite movie. I know you're having a rough time. We want to help. Zorika patted my mother's hand. Whatever my child eats, yours will eat as well. My mom started to cry. Late that evening, Zorika sneaked back with canned meatloaf, chicken pate, and Milka chocolate. My father drives to Germany through Serbia, where he fills his car with food, she whispered to Mom as they sat on the couch by candlelight. Because Zorika's dad was a Serb, he could pass through the checkpoints we couldn't get near without a problem. I was sure that Grandpa Murat's good bird karma from another war was saving us from starvation now. But I was confused about Zorika. She gave us food, yet she'd stolen Huso's home. When she invited me over to play with her son, Dayan, it felt weird to be in Huso's two-bedroom flat. His family had taken off in such a hurry, hoping to return soon, that they'd just grabbed their clothes and left everything else behind. I resented Dayan for having Huso's toy cards and World Cup soccer trading cards. I was ashamed to be in the bedroom where Huso and I used to play video games. It felt wrong to trespass here without him. One day, I would say sorry to Huso. I hoped he'd forgive me. Take this eggplant for your mom, Zorika said after we finished playing marbles. For all my reservations, she was so nice to me. I began to feel safe at her place. Daddy, did you kill any Muslims today? Dayan asked. I looked up, startled. It was a September night. I was playing at Dayan's when his father Milos walked in the door from a 2-week tour fighting in the outskirts. He wore a dark green uniform. As he took off his muddy boots, he leaned his AK-47 against the wall. My stomach tightened. Dayan leapt into his dad's arms. How many Muslims did you get? Dayan, don't ever say that, she scolded, her face red. Sitting on the floor, I finished my Milky Way bar, looking up at Milos, my neck tingling with sweat. He was over 6 feet, taller than my father, with huge shoulders. If he was killing Muslims in the field, he could easily shoot me here, or go up to get my father and brother. Can I wear your jacket and gun? Dayan begged his dad, who handed over his coat. When Dayan put it on, the sleeves reached the floor. Milos took the clip off his gun and gave it to his son. Here, want to touch the rifle? Dayan pushed it my way. I looked at it. I took it carefully. The barrel was still warm. That meant Milos had just been shooting Muslims like me. He might have killed my cousin Mirza, who, Dad said, was fighting in the Bosnian army nearby. Outside, mortars were firing from across the street. I prayed the bombs weren't landing near my grandma in the suburbs. Let's play war, Dayan said. He gave his father back the clipless AK-47, which Milos put on top of the dining room table. Against the constant background of explosions outside, Dayan and I hid at different ends of the apartment and searched for each other. I aimed my plastic Luger replica water pistol. Dayan put his father's holster around his waist. We weren't allowed to play with his grenade, which he kept on a high shelf that we couldn't reach. I imagined stealing it, squeezing the handle, pulling the pin and tossing it off the balcony, blowing up my friends who'd abandoned me. We used a pair of rolled-up socks as our grenades instead. I sneaked behind Dayan's back and tossed the sock grenade in front of him. We counted to 3 out loud, made a boom noise, then ksh! We covered our ears and threw ourselves on the floor so we wouldn't get hit by a second shock. In the next round, I used thread as a barbed wire to trip him. When he fell, I fired my water pistol in his face. Dayan was a nice kid, half my age, but I wasn't about to let him win. It was a thrill pretending I was a Bosnian commander conquering Serb bad guys, taking them out one by one, saving my people. Milos I wasn't so sure about. Despite what his son thought he did every day, he never knocked bread out of my hand, shot my water canister, or called me Belia. For the next 4 months, whenever he visited our place, he took his dirty boots off. He and his wife, Zorica, acted as if they respected my parents. When they brought over their son, my dad taught him chess. Dejan was pretty good for being just 6. "Mr. Ketka, can we play one more game?" he begged. My father called Dejan a good, well-behaved little boy. Still, we were enemies. In my calculation, if Milos was killed by a Bosnian soldier, Zorica would stop bringing over chicken pate and chocolate and jam and blame us forever. One night in October, I was there when Milos came home, smoking a cigarette, looking shaken. "We lost a lot of men in Vučovac," he told Zorica, throwing his bag down. "The Bosniak and Croat forces burned the whole damn village. Our T-84 gunner was sliced in half." I ran upstairs, ecstatic. "Their army lost, and this guy on the tank got sliced in half," I told Dad and Eldon, who pumped their fist. "Is Milos okay?" Mom asked. I nodded and sensed. She should worry about the people on our side he'd killed. The Vučovac victory gave me hope. We'd soon be liberated. Eldon spent hours every day lying on the floor with his ear pressed to the radio so none of our neighbors would hear the Bosnian station he was tuning into and think he was a collaborator. One day he heard news of a prisoner exchange. They were trading Muslim civilians for non-fighting Serbs. Eldon pushed Mom to put our names on the list at the post office so we could join our family in the Serb-free territory, and convinced me we had a chance to join Grandma Emina and Cousin Amila there. But a compromise couldn't be reached. I was crestfallen when the ceasefire was cancelled. The battles resumed. So did our dismal routine. Daka returned to steal more of our stuff and to pressure us to give her our apartment. She had the weapons and the power. All we could do was stall and fake smile and pray. With no heat or light or water, I was feeling pent up and restless. Last year, I'd had 2 birthday parties with my pals. Dad got me a transformer, and Grandma baked me a special dessert. Now, when I turned 12 on December 9th, 1992, I had no friends, no party, no cake. I didn't even know if my beloved grandma or favorite cousin were still alive. When Mom wished me happy birthday, I said, "Who cares? The dead Muslims are better off than we are." I didn't mean to make her cry, but I was desperate for us to leave. Without electricity, we'd freeze to death once the temperature dropped. When the snow fell, the streets were not plowed. You couldn't tell where the sidewalks were. We had to heat up water in a pot over the propane gas tank. Then I'd sit in the heatless bathroom tub, using the Red Cross soap bar, rough like sandpaper, pouring a cup of water over my head. Zorica tried to help. She had Milos come upstairs to refill our empty tank. She brought another Milky Way bar for my birthday and gave me 100 dinars I turned over to my parents for food. Compared to Daka, Zorica was Mother Teresa. That night, Daka joined Mom and Zorica for coffee, chatting like she was a girlfriend hanging out, not a conniving thug. Daka bragged about all the Serb bigwigs she knew. It gave Mom a new idea. In exchange for documents to get us out, she offered Daka keys and the deed to our apartment, which we owned. Daka agreed to the plan. "I'm going to Belgrade after Christmas. I'll obtain papers to get you through checkpoint at the Bosnian Serb border." She promised they'd come through by the end of the year. At this point, we understood the new rules. Whoever had the biggest gun took what they wanted. The Serbs just typed up their own papers and contracts and stamped them to look official. But we were excited to be going to Vienna in early January, joining Mom's brother there. Dhaka seemed our last hope. On Wednesday night, December 30th, 1992, my job was to meet Dhaka at the bus station when she returned at 11:30. That was way past the city's 8 p.m. curfew. I felt like a spy on a mission, trudging through a winter storm. The howling wind was whipping angry snow through the streets. I waited for Dhaka in pitch darkness at the station, so cold my toes were numb. I worried the police might surround me, but I felt important to be the one to escort her home with our papers. I wasn't a kid anymore. I was a man my family could rely on for essential tasks. The glass on the street lamps had long since been shattered. We'd had no light since the war began. Cigarettes sparked in the distance. Men in uniforms were smoking, covered in snow. I spotted the looming headlights of the bus Dhaka was returning on. As she stepped off, she handed me her heavy bag. I took it, sliding and tripping in knee-deep snowdrifts as I followed her. "I couldn't get the documents for you," she said casually, like it was no big deal. My face was burning and freezing at the same time. She'd lied. She had no connections to get us out. This would break Mom's heart. Walking behind Dhaka, I noticed that she'd slipped me her bag. She also put the thin leather strap holding her Uzi over my shoulder. It was my second chance to off her. As we crossed the street, I grabbed the Uzi handle. I only had to lift it and point the muzzle, then pull the trigger. I stopped shivering from the cold and felt sweat coming down the side of my head. Shaking, I placed my index finger on the trigger. "Press it already!" I yelled at myself. "We are not like them," my mother would tell me. I didn't want to hear her voice. I decided I'd call Dhaka's name first, so she would stop and turn around. I wouldn't shoot her in the back like a coward. I held my breath, gathering strength in my hand. "I need my cigarettes," Dhaka said, turning toward me. Surprised, I dropped the Uzi. It was swinging over my shoulder. "Wait, you have my gun," she laughed. It's too dark to see anything." I shrugged, pretending I didn't know I had it. She pulled the strap over my head, grabbing it back. Like I had missed my shot, I was relieved, yet still boiling with anger as I imagined my mother weeping when she heard the bad news. Back in our kitchen that night, Mom looked devastated. "But I thought you could help us get to Vienna," she asked, her voice quivering. "Well, I'll get you a place in Belgrade," Dhaka threw out. "In Serbia." I could tell my mother was incensed by Dhaka's stupid idea that we should live amid our enemies, where we didn't know anybody. "You'll stay with my mother there. I need your apartment." Dhaka was getting pushier. She pulled coffee from her purse and gave me a Mars bar like a consolation prize. I ate half, saving half for Eldon. I'd disappointed my mother. If I'd killed Dhaka, Mom wouldn't be crying now. I had no more hope. "We have to leave here as soon as possible," Mom said after Dhaka left. "What other Serbs do we know who will help us?" "There's no one," Dad said. "We need another plan," Eldon agreed. "Can you go back to Pero?" my father asked. "Why would you ask him for anything after what he did to us?" I raised my voice. It was a different Pero, they said, a good guy who used to lift weights at Dad's gym. Good Pero was the policeman who'd helped Mom get Eldon and Dad off the bus, saving them from being taken to another camp. Mom said he might be able to rescue us, but going to the police station was dangerous. We'd heard women were raped inside that building, and that bad Pero had shot someone to death there. On the second day of January, my mom took me to the police station to protect her. I was scared as she asked to see this good Pero, a police captain. A short, pale man came out of his office and shook her hand. He was polite. He was in charge. He spoke quietly, vowing to have our passports drawn up in a hurry. An elderly Serb drove to have our passports, drove Eldon and me to have our pictures taken the next day. We were to pick them up from a Serb woman who worked in the station. The morning of our departure, good Perro promised to call the border checkpoints to ensure that our names were cleared. It seemed suspiciously easy and straightforward, but we had no idea who might detain us or turn us in. After dawn, Dad and I sneaked out under heavy darkness in a blizzard. We hoped we wouldn't run into Serbs who could identify us. If we did, they might keep us from getting on our bus. We walked for 10 minutes without seeing anyone at all. Dad opened the front door of the house, and we were told to try. The house we were told to try. He knocked very lightly with his fingertips. The door opened. A Serb slipped us an envelope. Keka, here are the passports and documents you need. Good luck. We did not tell Daka we were leaving. I hope that bitch never gets our apartment, Mom said. Snow is good for us, Dad whispered now. It'll keep everyone inside. We prayed the weather would worsen so soldiers would stay in their cabins at checkpoints. We told Zorica about our plan to flee at 5 in the morning. At midnight, she came with a few hundred Austrian shillings, plus a bottle of moonshine to bribe the bus driver. We all kissed goodbye. My parents didn't sleep. I shivered from cold under a stack of blankets. I could see my breath as we lined up to leave our home before dawn. It was January 3rd. Our goal was to get on the bus to Vienna, but we had no idea who would try to stop us. We were basically winging it. We each took one suitcase. The snow was waist high and kept coming down. It was the biggest snowstorm we'd ever seen in Bosnia. I was jealous that my old friends would get to sled in it down the hill, and then I remembered the slope the hill led to Luka. If we get back again, Daka will catch us, Mom warned. If Daka knew we'd fled behind her back, without leaving her our deed, we feared she would have Boban kill us. Hi, Keka, the bald bus driver greeted my father. He was a chubby Serbian who looked to be in his 30s. He wrote down all the passengers' names. At the checkpoint, a soldier would read off the list. If our Bosniak name stood out, our trip would end right there. The driver wrote Dad's initial, followed by our last name, S. Trebencevic. Since Sinahad stood out as more Muslim, he winked at Dad. We smiled. He was on our side, even before Mom handed him Zorica's moonshine. The blizzard made the drive much slower. There were no checkpoints for 3.5 hours until the bus stopped at the Bosnian-Serbian border. A soldier came out of a cabin. I was petrified as he stepped onto the bus's first step. Do I have reason to check on everyone? No, we're okay, the bus driver replied. I leaned my head into the aisle a little bit, holding my breath, praying he wouldn't stop us. He appeared to only skim the list. Please, God, let us leave. I hoped the soldier wanted to get back to his cabin to stay warm. The bus was half filled, 20 other people scattered around empty seats. They all looked like Serbs traveling alone. A few couples going on weekend trips. My parents' age or older. Hardly any luggage. I knew that a terrified family of 4 traveling together, lugging thick double bags in the middle of a war, stood out. I was scared that our fellow travelers could tell who we were. We waited for someone to give us up, but the other riders kept quiet. We didn't know why. The snow kept falling. So far, the blizzard, a friendly bus driver, and the silence of the other passengers were saving us. At the second roadblock, we were stopped on the same bridge where we'd been humiliated last summer. We could be forced back at gunpoint, this time in deep snow. A tall soldier in blue camouflage and a beret came aboard, bellowing, "Identification!" as he marched down the aisle. "Any Muslims?" He stared at my boots. I was sitting beside Dad, Mom with Eldon, who was still in more danger. She wanted to protect her son, who was fighting age, knowing he could be pulled off the bus at any second to be shot or sent to another camp or taken by the Serbian army and forced to dig trenches. I winced at the blue soldier headed straight for us like a magnet drawn to our terror. "Documents!" he demanded. Mom handed him our passports and the official letter signed by Good Perro. The blue soldier got agitated and yelled, "Sema Trebishenich!" out loud, emphasizing Dad's first name, which revealed we were Bosniaks. "Get off the bus!" "Please, not again," I was praying. Mom pointed to the letter that was supposed to guarantee our passage. He didn't buy it. She said Captain Perro's name. "Who the fuck is he? You're not going anywhere," he screamed. "Please, we have the required paperwork," Mom begged. "My young son has the flu." "So, what the fuck do you want from me? Take him to the doctor," the doctor spit out, ordering us off the bus. "You can leave now." He told the driver to take off without us. "Captain Perro was supposed to call the checkpoint to leave our names with the guards. Will you check, sir?" My mother begged. "Please." We were hours away from home, at the Serbian border, stuck in no man's land, in a blizzard, past the point where we could turn to our apartment. I tried not to cry as we stepped off the bus. We had nowhere left to go. Even if it was possible to catch another bus back to Birchkow, Dhaka would have found us out. Stop fighting. We had no friends in Serbia. We'd be killed there. I was shaking and sweating. "Come with me," the soldier yelled, leading us to a room I feared was a jail cell. His holster held a handgun, and a stick hung off his belt. Inside the small office, I spotted pistols and rifles in the open closet. Would he shoot us? If he tried, I'd make a grab for his weapon. Were they loaded? Were we safer outside? We were safer outside. He might not kill us while traffic passed by. Now the soldier looked around the desk, rummaging through stacks. He grabbed a note on a piece of paper. Wait, had someone written our names down? Yes, it appeared that Good Pirro had indeed called for us. The soldier picked up the phone and dialed. "What's your name?" "Trevenchevich," Dad said. "Trevenchevich," the man repeated into the receiver. "Uh-huh, yes." I was numb, awaiting the verdict. Would we be allowed to leave or forced to stay? Live or die? Could he kill us right here? "Outside!" he bellowed. We rumbled back into the snow, shocked to find the bus still outside, waiting. The driver had not followed the soldier's order. He'd pulled off the side of the road and sat there waiting. God fucking damn it, chill! He'd pulled off to the side of the road and sat there waiting for 10 minutes. He didn't want to leave without us. "Aren't you letting them go? It's cold in here," the nice driver asked the man in the blue beret who held our lives in his hands. "Get the fuck back on the bus," he yelled. We reboarded quickly. "Thank you, sir," my mother said. Good Perro's connections worked. His letter and call protected us. God damn it. So did the bus driver's kindness. But even though we were back on the bus with the protective driver, our ordeal wasn't over. We still had to pass 2 patrols at Serbian, Hungarian border. Plus, there were still all these Serbs seated near us who could turn us in to any officer on the road. I worried they were resentful that we'd kept them waiting. No one said a word for 4 hours. I stared out the window, filled with adrenaline, checking for roadblock ramps or military jeeps that could stop us. In the worst scenario, we'd be thrown out and stuck in Serbia's enemy territory. My stomach cramped. On the Serbian side of the Hungarian border, the guard looked at us for a long moment, then returned our passports. Our final hurdle was the Hungarian policeman 30 meters farther down. He was in an olive green uniform with a white belt and visor. He skimmed our identification. "Why isn't your passport stamped?" he asked Dad. We all stopped breathing. We didn't know if the Serbian border patrolman forgot or if he was trying to cause us trouble. The Hungarian shook his head from side to side. We waited to see what he would do. Finally, he stamped our passports and then got off the bus. What? You can be on here too. All right. And then got off the bus. The ramp lifted. I looked at my brother, afraid to react, until the bus was on its way. Then we both raised our arms and our heads, cheering in relief. I pumped my fists in the air. Eldon and I high-fived. We'd made it. My mother smiled and relaxed her shoulders. My father let out a sigh of relief. The bus driver let go of the steering wheel, looked at us in the mirror, and clapped his hands. Everyone on the bus applauded, grinned, or nodded their heads. I gathered that the other Serb passengers had been afraid to show they were on our side before armed soldiers, but now we knew they'd been secretly rooting for us all along. Nobody said anything for the rest of the 16-hour ride. I just watched out the window as we passed miles of farmland in Hungary. By the time we reached Viennese town, filled with street lamps and traffic signals, it was nightfall. The string of fluorescent bulbs hurt my vision, so I squinted. It had been 10 months since our eyes were last exposed to evening lights. That's the end of that chapter.